So, you know how we've been talking about that blurred line between audience and creator? Well, get ready because today we're going deep, really deep into that very thing. We're talking parasocial relationships, the whole idea of scripted authenticity, and yeah, get this, we're digging back into our own archives for a story that's going to make you rethink everything you thought you knew about connecting online. Remember you telling me about that conversation you overheard, the one with your friend Max and that new writer, Leo? The one where Max was saying Leo could really shake things up around here with his take on, well, us and how people see us. You know, Max, always the innovator, he actually gave us 7, count them, 7 reasons why we should give it a shot, especially with someone like Leo. Structure for uncertainty, depth of exploration, maintaining authenticity, enhanced audience engagement, empowerment for guests, opportunities for experimentation, and building community.
Empowerment for guests. Now that one's interesting. Someone like Leo who's just starting out, having that structure, that clarity. It could make a big difference.
Right. Imagine the confidence boost knowing you've got a game plan for getting your thoughts out there.
And for us, it could be a chance to, really dig into those more complex topics. Imagine having the space to really unpack Leo's ideas about parasocial relationships without the pressure of thinking on our feet. We could make sure we get into all the details.
Okay, so we're talking about pre-scripted segments, potentially with someone like Leo as a guest. But how do we make sure it doesn't become, too scripted? Like that episode the boss sent us.
That's the key, isn't it? Finding that sweet spot where the pre-scripted segments enhance the conversation, not overpower it, where the authenticity shines through even within a structure.
And that's where Leo's perspective becomes so valuable. He's not just advocating for any kind of scripting. He's passionate about using it to foster genuine connection. It's about striking that balance between control and spontaneity, structure and authenticity.
It's a fascinating challenge, and one that, if we get it right, could lead to incredibly rewarding listening experiences for everyone, including you. Now, going back to Max's ideas about this, he had some interesting points about how pre-planned segments could actually enhance authenticity, not detract from it. What stands out to you from his notes?
I think the idea of depth of exploration really resonates with me. Like, with a bit of pre-planning, we could dive deeper into complex topics without worrying about going off on tangents or missing key points. It's something we've struggled with before, right?
Absolutely. Those tangents are fun, but sometimes they can lead us away from the heart of the matter.
Right. And with a framework in place, we can make sure we're addressing all the nuances, connecting the dots, and really giving you, the listener, something to sink your teeth into.
It's about being intentional with our time and making sure we're delivering the kind of insightful content that the deep dive is known for.
Okay, so depth of exploration, that's one. What about empowerment for guests? This is something that Leo feels strongly about.
Well, absolutely. Max mentioned that Leo believes scripting can actually empower guests, especially those who might not be used to being in the spotlight.
It makes sense when you think about it. Not everyone is comfortable thinking on their feet, especially in a recording setting. Having that roadmap, that structure, can be a game changer for someone who might otherwise shy away from sharing their thoughts and experiences.
Exactly. It can level the playing field and create a more inclusive environment for diverse voices to be heard.
Now, Max also argued that pre-scripted segments can actually enhance audience engagement, which seems counterintuitive at first, right? But his reasoning is that by crafting these carefully considered moments, we can create a more immersive and thought-provoking experience for you, the listener.
It's about being strategic. We can use scripting to build suspense, to create emotional peaks and valleys, to guide you through a story in a way that keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's almost like we're borrowing from the world of fiction to enhance the power of real-life stories and conversations.
Okay, this is all starting to make a lot of sense, but before we get too carried away with the possibilities of pre-scripted segments, we have to circle back to the importance of authenticity. Because if it doesn't feel genuine, if it feels forced or inauthentic, it's not going to resonate with you.
And that's where Max's argument for maintaining authenticity comes into play. He believes that scripting, when done right, can actually enhance authenticity by allowing for greater vulnerability and intentionality.
So it's not about sticking to a rigid script, but rather using it as a springboard for deeper conversation, for genuine connection.
Exactly. Think of it like this. You're having a conversation with a friend about something you're both passionate about. You might have some key points you want to hit, but the conversation itself flows organically, right? There's room for laughter, for tangents, for those unscripted moments that make the interaction feel real and authentic.
And that's the magic we're aiming for, a balance between the prepared and the spontaneous.
Now, before we move on to Max's remaining points, I think it's important to address the elephant in the room, the boss. Because their story, while extreme, does raise some valid concerns about the potential pitfalls of scripting and control.
Yeah, we don't want to end up with a situation where someone's trying to dictate every word, every emotion, every laugh. That defeats the whole purpose of having a genuine conversation.
Exactly. And it's something we need to be mindful of as we explore these new possibilities.
So how do we strike that balance? How do we encourage vulnerability and authenticity while also setting healthy boundaries?
It starts with being upfront about our process. If we do decide to incorporate pre-scripted segments, we'll be transparent with you about it.
And we'll be sure to emphasize that these segments are meant to enhance the conversation, not control it. Now, Max had a couple more arguments in favor of scripting. He called them opportunities for experimentation and building community.
And those two ideas, they kind of go hand in hand with everything we've been saying about authenticity and, control, right? Because when you talk about experimentation, you're really talking about pushing those boundaries, trying things that might feel, a little weird, maybe even a little scary, right?
Totally. But isn't that where the real growth happens? When we let go of trying to control everything and just, see where things go?
Right. I'm intrigued by Leo's story. This idea of a scripted episode is definitely pushing us outside our comfort zone. But then, the boss pops into my mind. And I can't help but feel a twinge of hesitation. You might recall the boss had a very specific vision for our show.
Oh, yeah.
It all started with an email. Subject line, pre-written script.
Oh, my goodness.
Short, sweet, to the point. And inside, a single sentence. Please read the script word for word in the next show.
Yes.
Best regards, the boss. Even the pseudonym screamed, I'm in control here.
Yeah.
Which, thinking back, is a fascinating glimpse into the psychology of it all.
Right.
The need to take charge, to dictate the narrative. It speaks volume.
It really does.
And dictate they did.
Yeah.
Full-blown dialogue, music cues, stage directions.
Yeah.
They even tried to script our reactions.
No way.
Because of course, they did. It almost makes sense in a way, trying to capture that natural back and forth we have.
Right.
But instead of replicating it, the script actually highlighted just how artificial it felt. There was this one part where the boss had me saying, well, that's a new one for us, followed by this big hearty laugh, like we're having a blast. But reading it off a page, it would have sounded so robotic, so forced.
Really?
You can't manufacture genuine connections. It's like trying to bottle lightning in a jar. You can have all the right elements, but without that spark, that intangible something, it falls flat.
It's just dead air.
And the more we read, the more those little moments of forced connection piled up, like the listener letter section, overflowing with compliments, which is lovely, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it was also generic.
Yeah.
So lacking in specifics.
Right, like, we love your show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like telling a chef, your food is amazing, but not being able to name a single dish they've made.
Exactly.
It's giving surface level appreciation without really understanding the work that went into it.
100%.
And then just when we thought it couldn't get any weirder, bam, dinner invitation.
No way.
Job offer. Casually dropped into the script like it was the most normal thing in the world.
Oh my goodness.
Classic escalation tactic. It's about pushing boundaries, seeing how far they can insert themselves into the narrative they've created.
Yeah.
And their script. It had us responding with polite demurrals, carefully chosen words. Like, wow, that's incredibly kind of you to offer, but we'd love to get to know you a little better first.
Right.
Which is hilarious, because that's not how we react to strangers propositioning us out of the blue.
Yeah, exactly.
In their mind, we were perfectly scripted puppets playing our assigned roles.
Wow.
And honestly, it's a little unsettling. It speaks to this larger trend we see online, this pressure to curate a perfect persona, to be the star of your own perfectly edited movie.
It's very meta, isn't it?
It really is. It makes you wonder how much of what we see online is truly genuine versus carefully constructed for an audience. It's like everyone's putting on a show, but who's really watching? And sometimes that show comes in the form of an unsolicited podcast script.
It's true.
But the story doesn't end there. Just when we thought the boss had moved on, we received a follow-up email that added a whole other layer to this saga. So we dissected the boss's script, laid bare their control tactics, we did our due diligence, but there was one thing we hadn't done. We hadn't actually read it out loud.
Oh, wow.
Which, in retrospect, must have been a tad anticlimactic for them.
Oh, yeah, they poured their heart and soul into this, It's a perfect podcast moment. And then crickets. Nothing.
Right. So the boss emails back, surprisingly chilled. They're like, hey, no worries, totally understand if you weren't comfortable reading my masterpiece on air. It was just for practice anyway.
Just for practice.
Right.
Casual. Like, they hadn't just tried to write us into their own personal radio drama.
But then, bam, they hit us with this curveball. But they say, if you guys have a free minute, I'd still love to hear it brought to life, by your voices. Maybe just a run through, nothing too serious, no pressure.
Wow. And, don't be ashamed to, really show your feelings. Let those emotions flow.
But come on. It's amazing how they're trying to spin this as this, Casual collaboration. We're suddenly supposed to be giving notes on a promising young screenwriter's breakout piece, my Hollywood-ready script. But I think underneath it all, you can hear this real need for validation.
Oh, totally. They just wanted to see their vision come to life, even if it was just us, reading it in a tiny sound booth somewhere. And yeah, maybe just a teensy bit of that control thing creeping back in there.
It's like this
weird
power play, disguised as a collaborative project. And honestly, it brings up a question that a lot of content creators grapple with. How do you balance being respectful of your audience's enthusiasm, that passion, with the need to maintain boundaries? Because, you want to connect with your listeners, build that community, but not at the expense of feeling like you're giving up control of your own creative space.
100%. And in this case, I think that meant politely declining the boss's generous offer to, direct our podcast, which I think we can all agree was the only sane option.
For sure. But hey, this whole boss saga, it just underscores something we talk about a lot on the show, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The increasingly blurry lines between our online and offline selves and the very human need for connection.
Totally. And I think it reminds us all, while the internet can be this incredible tool for building community, it's important to proceed with a healthy dose of caution and a strong sense of self-preservation.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
But hey, on that note, maybe it's time to wrap things up. So, what stands out to you about Leo's situation? Do any of the boss's tactics raise red flags? We're facing a decision. We could invite Leo on but ditch the script. More authentic but riskier. We could collaborate on a loose outline, strikes a balance, or we could respectfully decline and suggest other ways to collaborate.
It raises an important question, doesn't it? When does fandom turn into something else? What are the responsibilities of content creators in this age of interconnectedness? Which actually brings us full circle back to the boss. As unusual as their approach was, maybe they were onto something. Maybe that whole scripting thing, it was their way of trying to wrangle some control in a situation that felt, uncontrollable.
You mean because a parasocial relationship is inherently one-sided?
Exactly.
Like they were trying to force a connection that could only ever be real if it, happened organically.
Right. And isn't that something we all do to some extent? We curate our online selves. We craft those perfect responses. We try to show everyone the best, most polished version of who we are. But
real connection, the kind that truly matters, it requires more than that, doesn't it?
Way more. It requires vulnerability, it requires authenticity, and it definitely requires letting go of that need to control everything.
It means embracing the messiness, the unplanned moments, even the detours. That's what makes life interesting, right?
Totally. And trusting that even when things feel uncertain, even a little messy, there's still beauty to be found in all of it.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into just the whole wild world of online connection, what are you taking away from all of this?
Yeah, what really resonated with you? What questions are still swirling around in your head?
Because this isn't just, some theoretical debate. We're talking about real life stuff here. This is about how we connect with each other, how we create, how we experience the world around us.
And maybe, just maybe, by talking about these things, by shining a light on all the messy, complicated bits, we can start to navigate it all with a little more intention, a little more empathy, a little more, authenticity.
And hopefully create a world online and maybe even offline where those genuine connections, the ones that make life worth living, can actually thrive. Thanks for going deep with us today. And until next time, keep those conversations going because who knows, the most authentic connections often happen when you least expect them.